Okay, let's look at question 2. 3 living things W, X, and Y are classified in the table below. In the space below, draw a diagram to show how energy from the sun is passed on to living things W, X, and Y. Okay, let's underline. Draw a diagram. How energy from the sun is passed on to living things W, X, and Y. So from this information, right, we know that we must start from the sun first. So we need to write down sun. Then draw the arrow. Please use your ruler for this question. Okay, now we know that the sun provides the plant the energy for the plant to make food. Okay, so if you look at the chart, if you look at the table below here, okay, we know that Y is able to make its own food. So most likely Y is a plant. You can write that down. Okay, and W and X both eat either only plants or other animals. So both W and X are animals. Let's write down. Okay, so in this case, our next energy transfer in the diagram should be from the sun, energy is passed on to the plant. Okay, because the plant is able to make food using the light from the sun. Okay, so continue. Draw the arrow neatly with your ruler, please. Alright, so from Y, since Y is a plant, right, we must look at the animal that eat only plants, and that will be living thing W. So in this case, this will be W. Okay, and then the next one will be another arrow. Draw with your ruler, please. Okay, and then the last one will be the animal that eats only other animals, and that will be animal X. Okay, so let's write down X here. Right, so check that your energy transfer diagram is correctly drawn and neatly drawn as well. Okay, question B. In what way is the sun important to living things X as shown by your diagram in A? So if you look at the diagram that we have drawn in A, okay, living thing X gets its energy indirectly from the sun. Okay, so we can write that down. Okay, or we can also write down that the energy is passed on to X from the sun, right? So we have a few variations. Let's write down. Or we can write down now this word indirectly can be in brackets. Okay, so these are the three answers that we will take into account. So you can copy the 3 answers down or just choose one. Okay. Right, continue to this next question. Jane prepared the setup below in a dark room to study the rate of photosynthesis of a water plant. In the experiment, she placed the torch at different distances from the water plant. Each time, she recorded the number of bubbles of oxygen produced by the water plant in 1 minute. Okay, underline the important information. So this is the, firstly, we have to identify the aim of the experiment, especially if it is given. So let's write that down. That's the aim. Okay, so what is changed in the experiment? She placed the torch at different distances from the water plant. Okay, so that is the change variable. Can I write that down? Okay, and each time she recorded the number of bubbles of oxygen produced by the water plant in 1 minute. Okay, so let's write down. Okay, her results are shown in the table below. Okay, so we have the distance between water plant and torch. Okay, and you notice that the number of bubbles of oxygen produced in 1 minute decreases as the distance increases. So we need to identify that relationship first. And the number of bubbles of oxygen decreases. So once you have identified the relationship, you realize that for part A, the question is related to the relationship. Okay, so why did the number of bubbles of oxygen produced decrease when the distance between the water plant and torch increase? This is the same as what we have just written here. Okay, now, but they are asking for a reason why. So we need to explain. Okay, now when the distance between the water plant and torch increase over here, right, we know that the torch is providing light for the water plant to make food. So when the distance between the torch and the water plant increases, right, okay, the water plant is getting less light. In this case, if the water plant receive less light, right, it is the rate of photosynthesis is going to decrease. Okay, when the rate of photosynthesis decrease or when photosynthesis gets slower, right, there will be less oxygen produced by the plant. Okay, and that is reflected in the number of bubbles that is counted or that is produced in 1 minute. Okay, so let's write that down. Okay. Right, so please copy down. Okay, next question. If the water plant was replaced with water snails, will there be bubbles of oxygen produced? Give a reason for your answer. Now you realize that there are two parts to this question. Firstly, they ask about the water plant replaced with water snails. Would there be bubbles of oxygen produced? So need to highlight this, underline this. Okay, write it down as number 1. Right, and then we need to give a reason. And that is number 2. Right, so let's take a look back at the diagram again. So if we replace this plant with snails, will there be oxygen produced? What do you think? Okay, now the reason why oxygen was produced by the water plant is because the water plant is able to make food or photosynthesize in the presence of light. So if this plant is removed or taken away and then we put in water snails instead, okay, snails are examples of animals and animals are not able to make food by themselves. Okay, so in this case, the snails will just undergo respiration, okay, and they will not be able to photosynthesize, and therefore oxygen will not be able to be produced. Okay, so let's write that down. Right, so that's the reason. Question 2. Ben plucked a leaf from a plant that was exposed to sunlight in his garden. He tested the leaf for starch with iodine solution. Iodine solution will change from brown to blue-black if there is starch. It will remain brown if there is no starch. So this is just a recap of what iodine solution does, or what the iodine test does. Okay, so the diagram below shows his observation. So we have this diagram and we know that the outer part of the leaf turned blue-black and the inner part of the leaf remain brown. So let's write down what that means, okay? So underline turn blue-black and underline remain brown. Okay, so from here we know that when the leaf turn blue-black, okay, it means that there is starch. Okay, so we can write down starch is present. And if the iodine remains brown, that means there is no starch. So let's write down starch is not present, or we can write down absent. Absent if you want. Just make sure you know what it means, okay? So which part of the leaf contains starch, and we have to explain our answer. Okay, so let's write down. So again, there are two parts to this question. First, we have to identify the parts. And then next, we have to support our answer with reasons to say why we know that that part contains starch. Okay, so let's write down. Okay, so we know that from the results of the iodine test, okay, the outer part is the part that contains chlorophyll, okay, because it contains starch. So when starch is present, it means that the plant, this part of the leaf has made food, was able to make food. Okay, so if this was able to make food, that means this part must contain chlorophyll. And if this part, okay, the inner part was not able to make food, that means it does not contain starch and it does not contain chlorophyll, which makes it unable to make food, right? So next question, Ben found that some of the leaves of the plant were half eaten by caterpillars. What did the caterpillars obtain from eating the leaves? Now this is pretty straightforward. Okay, so we can underline. So caterpillars are animals, and if they are eating the leaves, okay, it just means that they are getting the energy by eating the leaves. Okay, the leaves are their food, so you can write down they get energy. Okay, and you can write down the leaves are the food source. Okay, all right. So check that you have copied all the notes and corrections. Okay, when we come back to school, please hand in to the finish tray. All right, I'll see you again